Welcome to another fabulous edition of Comet Algebra. This video is for Algebra 1, Chapter 13, Section 3, Adding and Subtracting Rational Expressions. And these ones will have common denominators, which is really nice, makes it easy for us. When you have expressions that have common denominators, you just go ahead and add the numerators or subtract them. Again, kind of makes it easy. This goes back to your skills when you had 3/8 plus 2/8 is 5/8. Notice how we added these two numerators and we did not touch the denominator. It stayed exactly the same. So let's follow that strategy. Example 1, go ahead and just add the 4 and the 9 to get 13 and leave the denominator alone. If it's possible, we do simplify this fraction, but that is already simplified. Example 2, go ahead and add 2a plus 8a would give us 10a, and the denominator remains 15. Here we can reduce the 10/15ths, just like we always have. They have a common factor of 5. Therefore, we end up with 2a over 3 as our simplified answer. Looking at example 3, again, we already have common denominators, so we're set to go. Go ahead and add the numerators. We would get 4a plus 4b all over a plus b. And then we stop and notice there's some factoring we could do in this numerator. They have a GCF of 4. So now we go back to the skills that we learned in the last section. We factor out the GCF of 4, and we see that we can cancel the common factor of a plus b over a plus b, and so the final simplified answer is just 4. Here in example 4, again, we notice that we have common denominators, but what's going to be tricky about this one, see this subtract sign? You have to realize that you're subtracting every single term of this numerator. So this is 3x squared minus 1x squared, which is 2x squared. Then we have 3x minus x, which is 2x. And then we have negative 20 minus 4, which is negative 24, all over the common denominator of x squared plus 9x plus 20. And now this looks a lot like a problem we could have had in the last section, where I don't know right now. I need to factor and see if there is some simplifying to do. So let's take the GCF out of the numerator. Let's take the 2 out, and then we get x squared plus x minus 12. Let's see if we can factor this. What two numbers multiply to 20 but add to 9? And I'm seeing a 5 and a 4. So now let's look at this numerator. What could multiply to negative 12 but add to positive 1? And I'm seeing a 3 and a 4. So if the 3 is negative and the 4 is positive, we will have our positive 1. So it looks like I'm glad we pursued this. We do have some canceling we could do. This, both top and bottom have an x plus 4 term, and so I don't have room to write it again. There's your simplified answer. Now I know we talked about this -1 trick a little bit in section 1, but now I want to put it in the video and have you officially add it to your list of skills. And we use this when we have something in the numerator, like if we had this in the numerator, x minus 3, and in our denominator we had 3 minus x, and we notice that they're opposites of each other, and if they were just switched around, we could cancel it. So when you have opposites like this appear in the numerator and denominator, you need to, and there's the bell, you need to factor out a -1 from one of them, and then you'll be able to cancel them. And I just call this, just out of fun, the -1 trick. So let me just show you what I mean. If this 3 minus x, well, let me just put, if we had x plus 3 in the numerator and 3 minus x in the denominator. If we leave this numerator alone, because I kind of like things in standard form, and if we factor out a -1 here, that would make this positive 3 a -3, and it would make this negative x a positive x. And then I like to switch them around because, again, I like things in standard form because I'm a weird math teacher. So if I rewrote this, then I'd have x minus 3. So do you see what the -1 did? It changed that positive 3 to a negative. It changed that negative x to a positive. And now these match exactly. This now can be canceled, and we're left with the -1. So whenever you have the same terms, but they're opposites, you can use this -1 trick. So now let's try it in a couple examples. So we're asked to simplify this one. We know that we have to factor and cancel. So when we factor to get a -12 and a positive 1, it would be x plus 4 and x minus 3. And we notice in our denominator, we almost can cancel. This just needs to be in a different order. So we do that -1 trick. Factoring out a -1 out of a positive 3 makes it a -3. Factoring out a -1 from a negative x makes it a positive x. Now I'm putting this extra step in. Pretty soon you won't need this extra step of actually factoring out the -1, and then I'm just going to switch places here, putting the x in front and the -3 in the back so that it looks really clear. Now these cancel, and so we're left with, and I can leave this -1 in the denominator, or I can put it in the numerator. Either way, it's -1 times x plus 4 in its factored form. So now let's use this skill to go ahead and add these two fractions. We notice that we almost have common denominators. This is an a minus 7, so I'm going to keep that denominator. But I know I need to have the exact same denominator over here before I can add them. So I want to be able to write this second fraction as an a minus 7 for the denominator. So let's work on this. Let's take out a -1. That would make the 7 negative and the a positive, and then I could switch them around. So I do indeed have this denominator if I have the -1 in front. And then this is 5a. Now, I don't want this -1 in the denominator because I want to have this straight up common denominators, a minus 7 and a minus 7. So I'm going to take this -1 and move it up to the numerator, and there's the other bell. So let's write this as 6a over a minus 7. Bringing this -1 up, I have a -5a over a minus 7. So do you see the subtle adjustments I had to make in order to get two denominators that are the same? And now we can go ahead and add them, and we would end up with a over a minus 7. And we can talk about this -1 trick more in class if you like, but it's just a really handy tool to have ready to use whenever we need it. So now you have the knowledge you need for section 13.3. So have fun with math.